Exactly 1 year ago, I wrote the longest piece of creative writing I had ever completed. It was a 61,215 word first draft of a romance novel, and today is the day that I beat that record. This was the first draft of a romance novel that I completed for NaNoWriMo last year, and I'm not doing Nano this year, but I have been using the fall to really just dig in and push ahead with the creative writing project that I'm working on. And what I'm working on right now is a rough draft, and I'm really leaning into the rough parts of that, so I'm gonna really have my work cut out for me in a second draft. But my focus for this rough draft is just to kind of get as much of the rough shape of the story on the page as possible and allow myself to figure things out as I'm writing. I'm not going to be finishing that rough draft today, but I am going to be surpassing my previous word count record. I'm currently about 3,000 words away from that 61.2 thousand word record of mine. And so all I need to do today is really buckle in, write at least 3,000 words, and I will have exceeded that record. Word count obviously isn't everything with a writing project, and just because I'm hitting a higher word count doesn't mean that I am necessarily hitting a higher quality than I did last year, although it is a higher quality. There's a reason I decided not to revise that draft from last year into a second draft. But even though word count isn't inherently tied to quality, it is still just a really satisfying milestone to reach of exceeding the most words I've ever produced on the page before, and knowing that this isn't the day that I finish my first draft of this novel, so I'm just going to keep writing more and more, and the story is going to grow more and more even after today. It's a little past 10 o'clock on a Saturday morning. I'm going to get my coffee, get a nice glass of water, hydrate, caffeinate, tackle the writing project ahead, and see how long it takes me to clear those 3,000 words today. I'm taking an approach in writing this first draft that is kind of disorganized, but also this is the approach to drafting that always worked for me with academic writing, so I'm hoping that it translates well into creative writing as well. And it's an approach of, rather than trying to write straight through from the beginning to the end narratively, I am jumping around and kind of first sketching out some big plot points and then going in and filling in smaller things and just kind of moving around to wherever my kind of motivation is directing me and shading things out, expanding things as I go, and just kind of letting the big detailed picture emerge gradually. I'm liking this approach in general. I think it's giving me better results than the draft I wrote last year where I did just write straight through. I think that this approach is more organic to just like how my brain works already, so that I am working with my thought processes rather than trying to corral my brain into moving in this more linear beginning, middle, and end fashion. So I like it, except that the downside to this more scattered approach is that on a day like today, where I'm sitting down and I'm saying to myself, I need to write 3,000 words in order to hit my writing goal for the day, it's less clear where those 3,000 words are going to go. I'm not just sitting down and writing straight through 3,000 words forward into the narrative. I am jumping around in my story, a few hundred words here, a few hundred words there. And so my progress so far today has been moving more slowly than I want it to, I think because I don't have a clear plan for where to write in the story. So because of that, I just took a little bit of a break to organize myself and make a little writing checklist for the day, which is another thing I used to do in my academic writing. Rather than sitting down and saying, I'm going to turn this rough draft into a second draft today, I would break that work down into smaller tasks. I'm going to write a paragraph about this subject. I'm going to include this article into my chapter, and having those tangible things helped me get the work done that I needed to in my academic writing. So I'm trying to bring that strategy over into my creative writing, and I just made a checklist of a couple of plot points that I want to write through today, and I assigned them a rough estimate word count value for each of the plot points. And so now, rather than sitting down to my computer and saying, okay, I have this big goal of 3,000 words for the day, let's see how many words I can write through in the next 30 minutes, that hasn't been working for me. Instead, now I can look down at my checklist and say, okay, I want to expand out this plot point in the beginning of my draft by an additional 400 words. So I'm going to sit down, I'm going to go to that specific point in my story, and I'm going to write 400 words expanding out that scene. I'm hopeful that this is going to help me organize myself and make some more progress as I continue on with this writing day. So we're going to see what happens. And just like that, at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I have set myself a new record for the most amount of words I have ever contributed towards a creative writing project. I have exceeded my previous record by only about 200 words, but still, I exceeded my previous record. And I'm not done yet, you know? The cheapest mini bottles of kava that money can buy. In the past couple of months of really digging into this writing project, I've been trying to write in a more intentional and kind of self-reflective way and think about what choices I'm making, not just in my writing, but in my writing habits as well. You know, not just what goes onto the page, but how I structure my writing practice. And so I'm thinking now, you know, why does it feel so satisfying to reach a new word count record? Because like I said, word count doesn't necessarily translate to quality, especially in a first draft. I really lean into the shitty first draft mentality. I mess around in a first draft. I write placeholder language. You know, sometimes if I'm stuck in a scene and I can't get past a certain moment, but I need the scene to move forward, I will just write down something like, then she said something that moved the plot forward, and then I can just, you know, skip on to the next thing. So not all of those 61,400 words are very good, but why does it feel so good to me to have written 61,400 words for the first time? And I think that the answer might be that setting this new record just in terms of volume of words on the page means that I have pushed further than ever before in my consistency and commitment to a writing project, that I have stuck with something for longer than ever before. I don't know how many of these 61,400 words will end up making it into the second draft that I hope to eventually write, but I do know that I need to go through this first draft stage. I need to get all these words on the page, and I need to mess around and write a big, long, complicated, sketched out draft before I can turn this into something more intentional, more thoughtful, more polished. The same way that I needed to write that 61,200 word rough draft last year and go through that whole process and scrap that whole draft in order to now get to the point where I can be writing something better. So I have reached a new personal record in terms of words on the page, and now I'm going to just drink this little glass of kava and keep on writing. And then the fun thing is that for the rest of the day, every single word I put on the page becomes my new personal record. Every sentence I write makes this draft the longest draft I've ever written by one more sentence. The fun thing about writing is that it's never over. You're never done. There is no end point except the end point of when you decide that you just don't want to do anymore. But there's always more to do. You can always add more. You can always edit more. Writing is just a never-ending process of setting goals for yourself and then setting more goals for yourself, and then deciding that you should set different goals for yourself, and then just doing more. And you never stop, and it's never over, but like in a good way. You know what I mean? I'll tell you what, these bubbles are gonna go straight to my head. And there's no telling what the quality will be like of the next few hundred words I write today, but you know, it's a first draft. I'm gonna write them anyway. That's what revision is for.